Suwon, headed down. It's in! Martin Adam! Surely the title belongs to the Tigers.
Hello, welcome to the K-League United podcast. Matthew Binns here, and I'm joined for this live edition of the pod by Andrew Farrell. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, how are things? You well?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Fine, good. Enjoyed a good night of football, surprisingly enough, on television. So, yeah, it's all good.
I was going to say, for somebody who declares himself neutral, I noticed that you're sporting a Songnam top for this occasion.
Oh, yeah. To be honest with you, I was at the Suwon game at the weekend. A friend of mine he left Korea last year. He was always jealous. He never bought something with Suwon on. Songnam on it because the crest. They have one of the nicest crests in the league. So I dusted it down and brought it to the Bluewings game on Saturday, and I've just kept wearing it since then.
Fitting attire for what we're going to be talking about, yeah. I'm sure. And also joining us is Luke Evans. Hello, Luke.
Hi, good evening.
I didn't recognise you without the Christmas jumper, but I'm sure we're going to be talking about that as well. Enjoyed your weekend down to Daegu?
It was a fun 45 minutes supporting Daegu, kind of. We'll talk about it in a bit. It was good. It was a good weekend.
I'm sure we will. And we're also going to be joined slightly later on by, Paul. Well, no, maybe not. We're not. We're not sure. So Paul is supposed to be with us, but he is stuck in Arirang car park with his battery's dead. We shouldn't laugh. But if you are anywhere in the vicinity near Arirang, go and say hello. And if you know how to fix a car, I'm sure you'll be extra welcome. So Paul's notes are joining us, and I will be reading them, having only read them about 5-10 minutes ago. So we'll muddle through. I feel it's fitting to do this live in front of people as well. So we're going to crack on, and to do so, we're going to start straight from the mailbag today, and it's going to be Diogo Valente, our own Diogo. He's coming with your thoughts on the Hyundai Awards. Ooh, scathing commentary. Do you think the K-League Awards will be the same as the Hyundai Awards? Obviously, referring to the K-League Awards that happened on Monday. Some controversial winners, gentlemen. What stood out to you, Luke? What were your thoughts on the whole ceremony and things?
I think if you're going to have a team of the year and you don't put the top goal scorer in the team of the year, it doesn't really make a team of the year, does it? I think we've seen it time and time again with the weekly awards as well. It's people who score goals. It's people who get an assist. They don't actually look at who's played well, how people have played, how teams have played. The team of the week is always the team who scores the most goals and wins. I think it's kind of just a very limited way of looking at football. And if you've watched K-League this year, then I don't think the team of the year and the MVP and the manager of the year perhaps reflect the best team, the best players, and the best manager. I mean, if you're the manager of Ulsan, you have the money and the squad at your disposal that they do, then you should be winning the league. I don't think it's particularly a momentous achievement for them. It's the bare minimum. Winning K-League 1 is the bare minimum. Like I could win K-League 1 with Ulsan in that team, probably. But
you'll have to try not to bottle it at the end of the season. But yeah, Hongnumbo seems to have mastered that. Interestingly, it's you have to go quite far back. I can't remember the exact year, but we're talking well over a decade now, where there's only actually been one manager that hasn't won the league, who's won the Manager of the Year award, and that would be Park Ki-dong in 2020, when Jose Moraes didn't win it after winning a double. Well, the FA Cup doesn't count in these awards, I know, but still. But Jose Moraes had won it the year before after Ulsan managed to collapse incredibly on the final day of the season. But yeah, to me, the Manager of the Year award kind of lost all meaning in 2016 when Hwan Sung-hon won it with FC Seoul after being given a handy 9-point deduction in his favour. But that's just, well, that's all water under the bridge now. I don't bring it up regularly. Andrew, your thoughts on the awards?
Well, the funny thing is, I was going to make a really terrible joke when we're kind of figuring out what to talk about in this podcast. I was going to say I was surprised I didn't find room for Lee Sung-woo to shoehorn him in there as a 12th man or something. And yet the day is all about Lee Sung-woo anyway. Normally these things are just, well, not all. Sorry, there are times these things are just popularity contests as well. But yeah, like I saw the team coming in. I followed with interest the conversations, particularly on Twitter about it. The reality is as well is that I know that some people are complaining about, for example, the manager of the year and Jo Yanu perhaps being the goalkeeper of the year, and uh, Kim Yong Gwon as well. But often, as we know in most other sports, often when you pick up trophies, your players are going to be overrepresented in these things. So I'll be honest with you, when I saw the team coming in, I had a look at it, acknowledged it, and kind of moved on from it. It was good to see Overdan in there because I know he's had injury troubles towards the end of the season, but I thought it was nice to see like, some of his great performances earlier on this season were acknowledged.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Well, I'll just have a quick look into Paul's notes, and it's just big capital letters in red saying Thiago. Obviously, he snubbed for the best 11, and the words from Paul are a disgrace. He notes the stats. I'm not going to go too much into them because Paul probably will recycle some of these for the end of season. But he did mention that Thiago got 22 goal contributions, 17 goals and 5 assists, but was snubbed. And well, yeah, rightly so. I mean, it also goes on to argue that it should be the MVP. Lots of stuff about Dejon, keep going through. But yeah. Paul's also broken it down here, and this is quite interesting. The vote for the MVP is for forgot his name, Kim Yong-gwon. For Kim Yong-gwon, there was 6 votes from the managers, 4 from captains, and 55 from the media. 4 of those were his contemporaries. Zeka was second with 4 managers, 7 captains, and 41 people from the media. Thiago got 11 votes from the press, and An Yong-kyu got 8. So you can see how these kind of things break. And I saw on Korea Football News as well on Twitter mention in the build-up to this that clubs can only nominate one player for the MVP award. So each club puts one player forward. So Ulsan, I feel that they've put a player forward who they feel who deserves it, but more so in like Leonardo DiCaprio winning an Oscar after years and years of service, but not for his best film. That's how I feel kind of with this award. Well, I'm sure we can rectify this ourselves with our own awards at the end of the season. But yeah, leave who you think should be MVP in the comments. We might try and read them out at some point during this. We are going to move on from the awards because we will talk about them in our end of season pod. But we are going to talk about the main headline, and that is Suwon Samsung Bluewings. They are down. They have gone. Weeks and weeks of talking about this. It feels like every pod has had a bit of a Groundhog Day feel to it, but it's finally happened. Andrew, you were there on the day. Tell us, how did it go?
The game or the occasion? I think from the game point of view, well, there were 2 teams playing on Saturday. One of them was absolutely horrendous, and the other one was Gangwon FC. I couldn't get over how awful, how brutal Suwon were on the day. And I know, like, we're going to get into this a little bit later, like what went wrong with Suwon over the course of the season, over the course of the last couple of seasons. And obviously, Young Gi-hoon doesn't get the blame for what's gone on up to this point. But on Saturday, his team had 40% of the possession, and they had 3 shots on target, and what is probably the biggest game in the club's history, really, certainly since their heyday about 20 odd years ago. And it was interesting being there because it almost felt like, I think Luke and I actually talked about this on Twitter. Then the next day, it just almost felt like Suwon's game plan was for Jeju to win, and they were hoping that Jeju would do them a favor, and it wasn't really what they were going to be doing themselves. Gangwon had 5 shots on target inside the first 30 minutes before Suwon had even mustered one of their own. It was so lackluster. There was no urgency. Things did change in the second half when word came through. It was about the 50th minute, and word came through that Suwon FC had equalised. And then at that point, obviously, substituted players are sprinting off, corners are taken quickly, throw-ins are taken quickly. Players are not rolling around the ground for 10 seconds trying to get a decision in their favour from the referee. But like, where was the siege? Where was the proverbial kitchen sink? Like, nothing happened apart from Mulic wasting a really good opportunity with about 18 minutes to go. Like, you just kind of thinking of what was it like in the Gangwon dressing room before the game and the week leading up to it. Like, all these eventualities, I think, what could happen on this day. Do you think they really sat there thinking, actually, Suwon are going to bring nothing to this game, despite the fact that we now know that they're going to need to win it? It was extraordinary. And then the scenes at the end were um, when the final whistle went. I don't know if you could see that from watching various videos on Twitter and Instagram, whatever, but a lot of people just stayed sitting. It was such a strange experience. Like, I've never been in a ground before where a team has been relegated. So the players were just kind of huddled around the halfway line. A lot of the fans just stayed sitting down where they were. It was just a really, really unusual experience. And it wasn't until the speeches um, about half an hour later before people began to find their voice again. But like, over the course of the season, the Bluewings deserve to go down. But I just can't believe that on the day it was that they couldn't produce a better performance than that.
Yeah, I mean, they've built this reputation of being a final kind of team, being able to live up to these big occasions, to do the impossible like they did last year in the playoffs with that very late winner and things like this. So the FA Cups they've won in their history, despite poor league form. You think if any team of those three at the bottom were going to pull something out of the bag, it was going to be Suwon. And then at the end, pulling out rabbits from the hat and all the heads are decapitated, to paraphrase the thick of it. But Luke, I mean, we'll get into how this has happened to Suwon, but any thoughts from what you caught of the match as well? Because everybody had their eyes on it.
Yeah, I was flicking between both matches, and I had alerts on my phone so that I could find out what was going on, and I got pinged when things happened. It was surreal because I was keeping an eye on the time and on the clock, especially second half, because the Suwon Bluewings game was 2 minutes ahead in game time, and the Suwon FC game was 2 minutes behind. We're on like 56 in Suwon FC, and then Suwon Bluewings were on 58, and I was like, how's this going to happen? Who's going to finish first? Are we going to have like a team finish first in like one situation at full time in one game, and then it changes in the final 2 minutes? And as Andrew said, I was expecting once Suwon FC equalised, it would be long balls up to Mulic, get as many people up and in the box, just get some shots in, because you never know what's going to happen. Deflections, own goals, people missing balls, anything can happen. But Bluewings were just passing it about at the back and like chasing like balls into corners and doing nothing with it if they got it. I mean, I don't think Gangwon ever felt under pressure. I mean, Gangwon went into the game knowing that they only needed to draw, and even then, if they lost, they could still stay up if Suwon FC lost. And I think Bluewings definitely expected Jeju to do a job. And then when it was 1-1 in Suwon FC, it was kind of like, oh right, so what do we do? And I don't think they had any ideas. I think perhaps they kind of used up what luck they had in the weeks before. I think they used up a lot of their energy and their chances and their ideas in the weeks before, because they had been on a decent run. I mean, they won in Seoul, and you would expect if anything's going to push you over the line and get you safe, it's winning in Seoul and then having one game at home, winner takes all. It was interesting as well, because I know like Suwon FC, they were living dangerously at the end as well. I think they were actually chasing a win more than Bluewings. And there was a shot. Jeju had a free kick with about 10 minutes to go that hit the bar, and if that had gone in, like, and Suwon FC would have gone a goal down, then Bluewings would have been okay. But it hit the bar, and the other team went down. It was, I don't know. It was a surreal week of football, surreal weekend of football. I did definitely think more would have come from Bluewings going into the game at home, massive crowd, needing to win, and it just fell flat. I don't know. It didn't feel like an end of season game. It kind of just felt like that it's okay, we can try next week, and just it was weird. It was a weird atmosphere.
Yeah, kind of almost an entitlement that to
Yeah,
be in
yeah.
League One almost. We have a question in from Azri. He's asking, is out the loop about Suwon Bluewings, but what in the world happened to them that led to this? Well, don't wonder anymore. I've got Paul's notes. But yeah, I hope they're right. I mean, I'm in an Anchorman kind of situation here where Paul could actually just write anything, and I'm just going to read it out. But I do seem to agree with most of these, and for this season anyway, they just didn't strengthen in the key areas. Paul points out that they had too few centre backs. So they started off with Dave Bolthouse, Ko Myung Sok as their only real proper centre backs, and they did bring in Han Ho Gang, who did all right, but they're signing players from mid-table K League 2 teams that isn't probably going to help them. Up front, they went for Mulic, who can be a handful, I guess. He's always had a few goals in him, but he's always had a lot of chances missed as well for each one of those goals. They had Am Byung-jun, who didn't really get going. He didn't, he's no longer the threat he was from seasons past. They bought players like Komu Yol, who's just never been able to recapture that very early career form when he was at Pohang Steelers, when he was young player of the year and things. And that's all the way back in like 2014, 2015. He's never really been able to recapture that, and he's gone from club to club. They signed Popo, who underperformed. John Janu, he was always came off the bench. They also had a weird habit of not starting the best team. This was sometimes to get around the U22 rule. And sometimes it was just too late to change. And they didn't hire the right managers ultimately as well. Lee Byung-kun should have been thanked and moved on at the beginning of the year. Kim Byung-soo was never the right choice. He was a manager who comes in with a philosophy. If you had heard the interview with Acosti last week, he didn't sound very popular as well. Yeah, and there wasn't just many signings who worked. Acosti and Kazuki probably the only two. And it's just not really worked at all for him in that sense this season. But that's Paul's notes, not mine. But yeah, I kind of agree with all that. And for the bigger picture as well, like Suwon, for anybody's not been following K League in recent years and just tuning in today or just tuning in this season, well, Suwon, obviously were massive up until about 2014, one of the regular contenders. And at the end of 2014, and I've taken some of this information from a Korea Times article by Park Jae-hyuk, so I'll give the credit where it's due. But Samsung sold their sports management arm to Cheil Worldwide in 2014, and this coincided with a downturn in form of many of their sports teams, not just Suwon Bluewings, but also Suwon Samsung Lions, also their volleyball team and things like this, who've not been able to meet the standards expected of them. Cheil Worldwide, they responded saying they emphasised that the investments in the club were almost the same as before, but we've had Yong Ki-eun even say this year that he's complained about the decreasing investments and things like that. And you could also argue, do Samsung need a sports arm to the company anymore? So it's not exactly helping them marketing wise. And again, reaching from this article here, an industry official says they don't need sports marketing. It's sponsorship for clubs are seen as kind of a social contribution. And you could worry about other teams in this kind of sense as well, because the way the Korean conglomerate system works, you've got these massive, the chaebols, you've got clubs like Hyundai, owned by Hyundai Shipping, Hyundai Motors, you've got Hyde Park, which is kind of owned by Hyundai in a long way around of things. You've got POSCO that has ownership over Pohang, over Jeonnam, and you think it could happen to any club who are owned by these conglomerates when they're no longer needed. Investment can be pulled out, and we can just watch, what happened to Suwon could happen to these as well. But I'm still going to laugh at Suwon, obviously, because I'm sure they would take no. I'm sure they wouldn't miss a beat if it was John Book. But
just want to add to that as well, because the other thing as well is I saw 8 of their games this season, from the beginning of the season right up until the end, and the various different stadiums. I saw them playing in Wa Stadium in Ansan. I saw them playing in Incheon in the Cup. the other Suwon Stadium, and there's just been this cloud hanging over them for a long time at this point. And looking at their form, so it's not even just this season because I was working it out, looking at the league positions by round for the last couple of years, and in the last 70 round of fixtures in K League One, so last season and this season, they've been either 10th, 11th, or 12th in 59 out of those 70 weekends or those 70 rounds. They haven't been. Um, it's been 44 rounds of play since they were higher than 10. So it's a long time back, and they haven't actually been like in the top half of the table since they finished the 2021 season. Yeah, so the last two seasons basically they spent about 59 of the 70 weekends or so. They're about either 10th, 11th, or 12th. So I think if you took away the emotion of it, you took away the fact that this is the Suwon Samsung Bluewings, their history, and you looked at these numbers of how often they are struggling at the bottom of the table and how poor they were this season, how absolutely dreadful they were on Saturday against Gangwon. You didn't know you were talking about the Bluewings. That was kind of scratched out. You're looking at a team. You would look at this and say, "Well, thank God the trash has been taken out because they are awful and they've been awful for 2 years now." And it's tough to say, like, because I do think that the league will miss having them around. Um, I think it's going to be interesting for their fans, especially to go to places like to go to Gyeongnam, to go to Jeonnam next season, perhaps go to Gimpo, um, Seoul, Ilan, Bucheon, Songnam. There's going to be some great and interesting road trips for the Blue Wings fans to go on. But for the last two seasons now, they've been so awful that they've obviously flirted with relegation for so long, and they've just slipped through the trapdoor. It was going to happen eventually. So yeah, it just there seems to be, as you said, like managerial selections have been wrong. Some of their signings haven't worked out. Like Kimbo Gyeong came off the bench on Saturday as well, and himself, Kim Ju Chan and Mulich were the three big names to come off the bench against Gangwon. None of them had a positive impact on the game. I know Kim Ju Chan is young; he's only 19. Don't want to pin it on him, but even when they needed to change the game, they didn't get what they were looking for on Saturday.
I guess there's a few things to add to that. It's like one, like what you just mentioned there about Kim Ji-chan being very young, how often they've had to rely on young players in recent seasons. And obviously those players have gone on to do very well. They've obviously been purchased and moved to Celtic and places. But the fact that they're having to rely as well heavily on that youth doesn't bode well for them, really. But there is a comment here which I guess does have some point, and that is they talk about decreased budget, but it's still above average for K League One. They shouldn't have been relegated. Well, I mean, to some degree, yeah. I guess they still have a reasonable reputation. They can still sign players, attract players better than other clubs. But there has been that decrease. There has still been a decrease. It's a difficult one. I do kind of half agree. I think there could have been perhaps better management in terms of transfers. They had, as we read from Paul's notes, they brought in the wrong players. They've had poor management selection as well. There's a number of factors that have played in here. I don't think we can deny the investment. The lack of it has had an effect, but you've also got to work with what you've got. And if you're not working with, there's been no sign of that. There's been no, when you put in such a lifeless performance on the pitch to stay up on the final day, it's just rotten to the core. And I guess that kind of brings on to a comment here from Mike Baston, and that is, will there be a massive clear out at Bluewings? And Luke, you've not spoken for a bit, so I'm going to ask you.
I think there has to be. I mean, being relegated, they're already going to see another budget cut. Whatever their budget cut has been, going down to K2, they're definitely going to be playing with a smaller budget. And whatever that budget is, you would expect that it would be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in K2. And they should be in a position to strengthen from teams around them or from the lower half of K1 if they can find people willing to drop and help them come straight back up. But the players that they have, you've got to wonder if they're going to be there next year. And I know there's been some players who've been unfortunate with injury. I know like Dave Bulthouse has been struggling this year. And he's one of the players who he's got a lot of experience. He was at Ulsan for a long time. He's a very, very good player, and he's a good player to have around the dressing room, even if he's not playing in these situations. but I don't imagine he'll be there next year. And that could perhaps free up some of the budget. You've got Mulici now, who's been relegated twice and not really shown much at either Songnam or at Bluewings, and you don't expect he'll be there. There'll be people looking at the Korean players that they have and looking who can they take, who's going to be able to improve our team. I know Iki J has been, his name's already been rumored and linked with Incheon, but Incheon have said, or it's been denied that Incheon are interested in him. But I do imagine they're going to have to play more of their young players next year. They're going to have a clear out of anybody who's perhaps over 30, 32. And they're going to have to rebuild, because whatever happens next for Bluewings, it can't be a one-year plan. And I think that's something that they've had to deal with. They've been planning to avoid relegation this year and avoid relegation next year. There's not been any plan for kind of building up like a 2, 3, 4 year plan where they bring players in who were going to be good and improve the team for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. Everything's reactive. And I mean, as well, if you're a decent player on a decent salary, are you going to want to play in K2? So they might not have an option but to get rid of players, because there's going to be offers there. There's definitely going to be offers, because people are going to be looking and thinking, well, he's definitely too good for K2. We'll take him. But I don't know. It's interesting.
Wow. Yeah, interesting times indeed for the Bluewings. And I think that'll be the last we'll talk about them. Well, now I guess we'll do it on the season review as well. We're going one more time, but we have talked about them a lot in recent weeks. And, well, it's finally over. They are down. And we'll try and move on to something a little bit more positive after a short break. So don't go anywhere.
Fans, we want to hear from you. You're encouraged to email KLU at info@kleagueunited.com or tweet at KLeagueUnited with any questions, comments or reactions. Or ask directly during one of our live shows.
I did say we're going to start with something more positive, but we are actually going to talk about the Asian Champions League and some recent reforms. Hello, I'm Matthew Binns. I'm joined by Andrew and Luke. Before the break, we're talking about Suwon, Samsung's relegation, but we're now going to move towards the continental side of the game. And, well, AFC, they've only gone and shot themselves in the foot with some recent reforms. Yeah, it's just laughable. But so if you are not aware of the news for the Champions League, well, first of all, it's been split into Champions League Elite and ACL 2, Fast 2 Furious, which will be featuring John Buck Hyundai Motors next season. But the ACL E, as it will be shortened to, they've announced this week that Saudi Arabia has won the bid to hold the final stages. And for this, it means it's going to go back to the hub for the quarterfinals, semi-finals, and final one leg apiece in Saudi Arabia for the next 2 seasons, and it provisionally granted to them for the following 3 seasons, depending on their performance. Champions League football, yeah. Ooh, I'm not very happy with these changes. I'm assuming you're not a big fan as a groundhopper, Andrew.
No, and like I've really enjoyed jumping on the Incheon bandwagon this season. I've seen 3 other games so far in the Asian Champions League. The Haiphong qualifier, the game against Shandong Taisen, and the game against Yokohama. And I know those type of games are unaffected by this. Those group stage games are unaffected by this. But at the same time, seeing continental teams come to Korea and playing in the Asian Champions League, it is special. It's such a wonderful occasion to be in the Incheon Stadium watching these teams from other countries coming over. The different type of support that they're bringing, flags, banners, chanting. It's just all simply so wonderful. And obviously, a club like Incheon playing at this level for the first time has thoroughly enjoyed their experience too. They might even qualify for the next round. So just the idea that we're losing that at the most important stage of the season, from the quarterfinals to semi stuff, it leaves a really bad taste. And okay, I like watching football wherever there's a game on in a local stadium, but I can imagine fans like Luke and yourself as a John Book fan and Paul Need as a Deja fan, if your team made it that far, to think that you'd have to, perhaps go to Riyadh or Jeddah or wherever to go watch one of these games is really disappointing.
Yeah, Luke, I guess echoing the same thought. I mean, you've got a team in the Champions League. Actually, we both have at the moment. What are we on about? We won't. We both of us won't next season. So, I mean, who cares, really? Actually, let's just end this here.
Well, I mean, I would go a step further, and I would say that realistically, holding it in a hub, a 10-hour flight away, is for over a 2 weeks period, is essentially isolating any fans from this part of Asia from actually going to the games. It's a ridiculous decision, and it's more pandering to the people with money. It's showing a huge disrespect to the actual fans and the clubs in this part of the world, and it makes you wonder why not just have a breakaway competition. What if you're going to split East and West AFC? Why not just do it permanently? Like, just let them have a competition, let them buy it all up, and we'll have our own little competition with our set of teams.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point. There's an obvious reason why it's being done. It's not being done in the spirit of football. It's not being done in the spirit of building relationships. It's being done because of money, and I don't.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's what it is. I mean, they said in the statement, and I'm just saying it for the podcast. They said in the statement other nations were allowed to tender their bids, but come on. Let's not.
I don't understand why it has to be played in a hub. I don't understand why it can't just be kept in the format that it's in. Have the final in Saudi Arabia if they're paying you a load of money, but if you're going to have quarterfinals and semifinals with teams from this part of the world, like, let them have in front of their fans.
Well, yeah, I don't understand who's going to be watching either. I don't because the time difference is not going to be great either in that sense.
No, what is it? 6 hours, 7 hours?
Yeah.
And if it's an evening game over there, it's going to be like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Like,
it's just, the east side of Asia has represented this competition far more often than the western side. How many times has the trophy been on this side of the globe? And it's just like, well, I mean, that shouldn't really matter. It should be spread evenly about. But if we're going to talk about which side should be deserving to hold these kind of hubs, it's like, well, clearly the side that the teams that are actually entertaining and getting, well, that entertaining is perhaps the wrong word. I take that back. But the teams that are winning it should probably have a bit more of a say in it. But anyway, that's one way of looking at it, and a very convoluted way of me saying that. But yeah, from the mailbag, we do have something in from John Book fan via Twitter, our own Tom Bolger. He asks, do you think clubs and fans will protest against the ACL Elite later rounds being hosted in Saudi? Well, I guess maybe not in Saudi.
I mean, the thing is, you can protest all you want, but the decision's been made. So, like, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's been made, and it's already set up for the next however many years with however many more years, and then we'll also do it after that to run into the Saudi Expo and then the Saudi World Cup, and then what's the point?
There won't be. Well, the thing that we're protesting in Europe at the proposed Super League, but I just don't think you're going to get that a collaboration of fans from different countries around Asia protesting with this. And I'd genuinely be interested to know, like, from sort of Pakistan, that moving that way west, and even some parts of Southeast Asia. It is. I don't know if they'd all agree the same way that we're talking about this, and maybe there might be some interest in moving the competition around. I don't know. And you also have to wonder just about the money side of it. Like, I don't know if you guys are aware. Like, do you guys know how much money is pumped into this tournament every year, and perhaps this is just so lucrative that perhaps they thought they can't turn it down. I'd be surprised, but it's still awful. But I really don't think you'll see any kind of brands.
They have tripled the winnings for the ACL Elite. Obviously, that's not all of their costs and expenditure, but the winner of this, the ACL Elite, will be getting 12 million, with the runner-up getting $6 million. So they have put more in that sense into the competition. But I mean, I don't know. It just feels
it's awful.
Really not in the spirit of it. And I think it just ultimately comes down to, I think the region is too big. It's just too big for it to work. If this is they think is a fine solution. But yeah, anyway, slightly more positive news. A team hoping to make it to Saudi Arabia will be Gwangju, who finished third in the K-League One, becoming the fourth citizen club to make it into onto the continent. All of these four clubs actually happening quite recently. Obviously, Gyeongnam, Daegu, Incheon. It's good to see all the citizen clubs finally catching up with the conglomerate clubs that have been monopolizing these qualification spots for so long. But Gwangju, I'm gonna have to dip into Paul's notes. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna dip into Paul's notes because what I have on my screen here is Gwangju versus Pohang match review. Paul, and as we can all see, Paul is still in the car park. I'm checking for the update, and we've got none. Somebody, please go to Arirang and just check on him. Yes. Anyway, so Gwangju, they finished 0-0. I've had to watch the highlights because I was in Hong Kong when this game was happening. But, well, what a match. For a 0-0, it was incredibly feisty. Lots of late tackles. 9 minutes for the first red card. Iho J. Pohang, they wanted the play to stop because a player had gone down injured, and Gwangju then carried on. So then Iho J decided he'd leave a high foot in on Lee Soo-min, and Paul has put, and I do not get the reference, bit of Shawn Michaels in there with the sweet chin music.
He kicked him in the head.
Yeah, he kicked him in the head. Okay, yeah, that's I get. He's a wrestler, I assume.
It's a wrestling thing, don't worry.
Oh, wrestling reference is still going strong on the K-League United podcast. Everyone, one day we'll do a crossover pod. I'm sure if you run a wrestling podcast and you'd like to get some K-League podcasters in, well, I'm sure we could supply some. Anyway, but going back to the game, yeah, it still finished 0-0. There was quite a few good chances. Pohang, they had to change their shape a little bit to a 4-4-1. Tempers continued to flare. Asani and Yumin Ho got into a bit of pushing and shoving. Some rash tackles going in. Going to half time as well. It all got a little bit heated. Timo at the heart of it this time, who appeared to take a swipe at somebody. Manager Lee Jung-hyo telling people to stop talking, and Paul has put here in the most Alan Partridge way, it should really be Lee Jung-hyo who should stop talking. That's how I imagined he wanted me to deliver that line. So on the end, 0-0 though, that's all they needed, and that's what they got. Gwangju getting to celebrate in front of their own fans as they qualified and made history, ruling out Jeonbuk and Incheon. And Luke, you don't need to go into too much about Incheon, but tell me, how was your day down in Daegu?
I'm sure you're aware the Daegu away end is tiny, and tickets sold out in about 3 minutes. Every time we clicked on some to buy them, they weren't available. So we ended up in the immediate block next to the away fans in the home end. And because we couldn't wear Incheon shirts, we decided that Christmas attire was a good idea. So we went down in blue Christmas hats and Christmas jumpers. Half time, we managed to sneak into the away end and watch the game from our preferred positions with the away fans. It was a fun day out. The result, I don't think we've played a lot of football since September. We've got a lot of injuries. We've been playing in the FA Cup midweek. We've been playing in the Champions League midweek. We've got 5 or 6 regular starters out injured. I don't think anybody's particularly disappointed that we've not qualified. It would have been nice. It was a bridge too far. And at the end, all of the Incheon fans were applauding and singing, and a lot of them came to see the bus off at the end of the game. There was no complaints. There was nobody unhappy. We've done very well. And when you consider where we were 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, the progress that we've made in the last 2 has been remarkable. And we have a lot of young players coming through. And I think Gwangju overall deserve to be in third position. I think they deserve to have their opportunity. Yeah. It was a good day out.
Yeah.
Got back very late, but
Well, we've got lots of questions about Incheon and their goalkeepers. Apparently, you might be the person to ask. Adam Hicks coming in with, can you let us know who's playing in goal for Incheon next week? You heard he's the man to ask. We've got another one in as well. Same question. But yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So obviously, Kim Dong-han's starting his military service. It was due to start, I think, sometime this week, but they've postponed it to make sure players can finish the season, finish the relegation, promotion, playoffs, finish the Champions League games. So it will be Kim Dong-han in goal next week in the Philippines, and I believe he starts his military service within 2 or 3 days of that game.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Good insight knowledge. You are the man to ask, it seems. We are going to come back to you, Andrew, and talk about Gwangju season review because it's live and I've missed it. I could have, glossed over that, but I'm going to just tell everyone I am flicking between Paul's notes and my own, and it's getting a little bit confusing at this point. But before we do, let's just quickly talk about Jeonbuk because we have to squeeze them in. And they just pathetically lost to Ulsan, which is becoming more and more common now. Ulsan, obviously, they were up for the occasion, getting to celebrate winning a trophy, winning a K-League trophy in front of Jeonbuk, even though Ulsan already hold the trophy. So, it's not like you've won it from Jeonbuk. It's already yours. But anyway, Sol Young-woo with the only goal there. Nice finish, but he ruined it with a over-the-top celebration of him pretending to pick up a football. And yeah. The game was nearly overshadowed, though. I mean, speaking from Jeonbuk's performance, quickly, Jeonbuk, they just look really... the sequences, I saw a Jeonbuk fan, Tom Bolger, he's saying about the sequences not working too well in attack, and he's right. It just doesn't seem to connect up. When you look at the players they brought in this season, they've not really performed. You've got the likes of Rafa Silva, Lee Dong-jun, he's been a little bit injured and things. Andre Luis disappeared off the face of the planet. Jeonbuk have had a lot of things go wrong for them this season by their own standards, and they're going to have a very, very busy off-season probably. Ulsan, a nice, calm, reassured performance. The match did nearly get overshadowed, though, by an injury to Hong Jong-ho, who went up for a ball into the box against Cho Yun-ho, and just a collision in midair, and it ended up with the player concussed. Both sets of fans, both sets of players, very concerned about him getting taken off in an ambulance. He was back though for the end of the game, not really kind of remembering what had happened apparently, but fine by doctors to at least say farewell to his fans. So, best of. I'm hoping that there's no other further injury with that one. But yeah, going back to Gwangju then, because what we should have talked about, because we've talked enough about Jeonbuk, talked enough about Incheon, but Gwangju, the season they've had. Andrew, just tell us how have they managed to get into the ACLE?
Well, as we know, they came up automatically last season after going down automatically the season before then. And after, we watched some of those playoff games last season, and it looked like the gap between the top of K League 2 and the bottom of K League 1, there wasn't much of a gap, if there was any gap at all, really, the way especially Suwon struggled with Anyang. So I think when we talked about Gwangju at the start of the season and Daejeon, the feeling was that both of them should be okay. And I think probably all of us were on different podcasts throughout the season felt like that. But to think that they could finish third is absolutely extraordinary. They started the season really well. They won in Suwon as the promoted team, and they never, at no point this season, did Gwangju look like they were going to go down. I was having a look at where they were, kind of each different match weekend, and I think the lowest they got in the table was ninth, but they were pretty much always between third and sixth all season. They finished at 59 points. I was looking at that through the last number of years too. The 16 wins, 11 draws, and 11 defeats, a plus 12 goal difference. But they're 59 points because I kind of read some people saying Jeonbuk didn't have a great season, and Incheon were amazing in the end, but they had their eyes on other prizes as well. But actually, the 59 points that Gwangju accumulated is about on par what you'd expect the third place team to have in K League 1 for the last 10 seasons or so. So this wasn't, I think, down to the fact that necessarily because other teams have been pretty badly. Like this was a 59 points is a good return and a deserving third spot finish in the end. Looking at the results as well, I was at a couple of these games. Like it's amazing how many statement wins Gwangju had this season. 5-0 over Incheon. I was thinking of leaving that one out because I know Luke was at that game, and that was
I
right at
was.
the beginning of the year, a 5-0. But there was a 4-3 win over Daegu. I think they were 3-0 up and they nearly threw it away. There was a 4-2 over Pohang, 2-0 over Jeonbuk Motors. I was at that game. That was Petrescu's debut as Jeonbuk Motors manager. 4-0 over the Bluewings, and that result over the Bluewings moved them into third spot with 10 rounds to go, and they never relinquished third spot with 10 rounds to go, which is an amazing achievement given the squad that they have. They beat Ulsan 2-0 away, and they beat Seoul 1-0 away as well. These are great wins for a promoted team to have. And I just specifically talking about the game against Jeonbuk Motors, having been at that, they were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant that day. And Isun Man obviously got into the team of the season. Ji Song as well. Do Yeon Tak. There are a lot of really good players in this Incheon side, and I just liked what you said about what Paul said a couple of minutes ago, because obviously one of the great side stories to Gwangju finishing third in the table has been Lee Jong Yo's regular utterings and press conferences, which seem to hurt Matthew Binns quite a lot. So I think it's been quite a ride with them. We might talk about it in a second, but they need to fix their stadium.
Yeah,
It felt dangerous, honestly. We were we went to the game, the 5-0 game. It was brilliant. Loved every minute. But we had I think 2 blocks for the away fans, and the rest was tarped off. There weren't any home fans in it. It was just away fans. But there was only the one gangway up, and you have to go up two sides of stairs to get into the gangway. But again, one of the sides of the stairs was blocked, and it was like one way up and then one way down into the stands. And it felt really, really unsafe because everything was bottlenecking. And it was clear that there weren't enough seats open for the number of tickets and the number of people. So eventually they kind of opened more up, but they still kept the one gangway. And so when people were trying to get in and out, it was a death trap because it's a ramp up. They really need to sort it out. They shouldn't. I don't know. Will they be allowed to play there in the ACL if that's the state of it? It's temporary. It's all temporary stands. It's not safe. If you get big crowds, it's not safe. It's not meant to be used permanently.
No, it's interesting to say that as well. Peter Hampshire, he often regularly went to that stadium and complain about getting in and out of the press end is just an elevator, a tiny one, narrow elevator, and no real other exits going on in that. And yeah, you mentioned all the things you mentioned there. You think as well that, well, obviously all safety standards they've got to fix, but with the ACL coming up, you think that they're going to have to. There's going to have to meet something. There's got to be some requirements. They are next to the Gwangju World Cup Stadium, so there is the chance that they can always just move back there. But it shouldn't have to come to that. If you've got a stadium that you think is fit enough to play in every couple of weeks, then it should be safe, shouldn't it? It shouldn't be a case of, oh well, we've got to just make it safe for Champions League football. It shouldn't have to come to that.
There is one permanent stand, which is kind of the upper tier, I guess, where the press box is of the main stand. But even like the part in front of that is just temporary as well. So there are 4 temporary stands on what was, I guess, a running track before. But I remember at that Jeonbuk game, kind of standing behind the main stand, and all you can see are poles going everywhere. There's a bit of tarping to cover it, but it looks scary. It looks like it.
It felt scary.
Stadium is extraordinary, and a third place team as well.
Yeah. Well, this kind of ties into a question we have in the mailbag from Clint Jones, 94th minute, but he's talking about investment. He says, with Gwangju now in the UCL, unbelievable to write that. He did correct it and say ACL afterwards. But, Gwangju, possibly good enough for Europe. Who knows? Will it now encourage the city to invest more into the club or potentially encourage new investors, owners? Considering the location and the size of the city, is the club a potential sleeping giant in Korean football? Well, I'll pass it to you, Andrew, first.
I lived there before. It was the first place I lived in Korea, and when I moved there for the first time, it was Gwangju Sangmu. So there was absolutely no interest in that team, and I think there was a feeling from a lot of people that it seemed like a disgraceful decision to move the army team to Gwangju after what happened in
Mhm.
1980. I think because of that, there was always going to be not a huge amount of love for a football team. And I was at Gwangju FC's first ever game. I think they had 15,000 at it against. It was in early 2011, and to think where they are now, obviously finishing third, but there was a time when they could bring in 15,000 fans to a game, but it just seemed to dissipate. Obviously, becoming a bit of a yo-yo club didn't work for a while. Gwangju just feels like one of those towns as well. I don't know if this makes any sense, but it just feels like one of those towns that it's football is always going to struggle against the baseball team. They have the most successful
Mhm.
baseball team in that city, and I just feel like anytime I go back and having lived there before, and people who I talk to are still living in Guangzhou. I think I mentioned this to you before, Matt. I mentioned I was going to the Guangzhou Jeonbuk game, and people who I know live in Guangzhou were saying, "Oh, there's a game on." Like
Mm.
you're really uncertain that there was even a football game on, because I wanted to get a couple of interviews done for the site, and anybody who I knew living in Guangzhou didn't even know that there was a game on. That was obviously a huge game at the time. But of course, if you keep finishing third or you avoid relegation and you stay in K League One, then you'd have to think investment will come with that. But I think at the moment it's coming from a very low base at the moment. They're going to have to stay in K League One for a long time to get the investment they're looking for, and then hopefully a proper stadium.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to move on because we have overshot our what we were this tidy little 30-minute podcast we talked about before kickoff is doing well at the moment. But yeah, we're going to have a quick break and we're going to look at the playoffs because that's happening as well. It's not over in the relegation promotion fight. So we're going to have a quick break and we'll be back with more in a minute.
Fans, we want to hear from you. You're encouraged to email KLU at info@kleagueunited.com or tweet at KLeagueUnited with any questions, comments or reactions. Or ask directly during one of our live shows.
Okay, welcome back to the K-League where are we? Sorry, the K-League United podcast. We're live, everyone. Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. Matthew Binns here, joined by Andrew Farrell and Luke Evans. We have been talking about Suwon relegation, Gwangju in the Champions League, and now we're going to move on to the playoffs. It was the playoff first leg tonight, but before we go into that, the weekend, Gimpo FC, if you've not realised that they were playing tonight, well, they actually won at the weekend, defeating Gyeongnam 2-1 in the end after Gyeongnam went down to 10 men. This evening's results, Luke, though. So we've got Gimpo versus Gangwon and Suwon FC away to Busan I Park. How have the scores gone?
So Gimpo drew 0-0 at home in the first leg. So from that, I would imagine that Gangwon are going to take the advantage in the second leg, which is coming up this weekend. Gimpo didn't really offer much. I know they've been pretty impressive in K-League 2, but I think they had like one shot on target. The Gangwon keeper never really had to do very much. Gangwon had much more of the ball. They had more shots, and if they'd have taken their opportunities, it would have been pretty comfortable for them. Yeah, I'm sure Gimpo is going to be pretty disappointed with how tonight went because tonight was their big opportunity.
Yeah. Well, yeah, from Paul's notes, it seems, Gangwon 72% possession tonight, Gimpo 28 possession. Gangwon looking very much in control. Another clean sheet as well for Gangwon. They're not really scoring at the moment, but they are managing to keep teams out. And, well, yeah, it bodes well for them playing the next match at home this weekend. Andrew, though, you were tasked with watching Suwon FC away to Busan I Park. Busan I Park in the playoffs again, something they're very, very much used to. How did they fare?
So I watched this game only because you asked me to kind of preview the game on Saturday, but when both games are starting at the same time, I really wish I was at the Gimpo FC versus Gangwon FC game today, but that would have been a nightmare really, because this was a brilliant, brilliant game of football, and now it was decided in the most extraordinary circumstances. The fact that we had two penalties in the last 5 minutes or so of the game, the winning penalty came in the 98th minute, Lee Sung-woo sent off, second yellow card, 2 yellow cards in the space of about 7 minutes. Bruno Lamas with both goals, he was sensational today. Like you could tell he was really fired up after what happened in the last regular season game against Chunbok Cheongju. He was immense today. I said he was fired up. He's fired up with his teammates. He's fired up with the opposition players. He thoroughly deserved the 2 goals he got because he came really close to scoring, equalizing with almost a similar type of goal that Suwon FC had scored from. He was everywhere. But they got the result that they deserved in the end, but it came right at the end of the game. As I said, Lee Sung-woo was given a second yellow card for a foul inside the box. It looked like they were reviewing it. I think they were reviewing it for an offside. The penalty stood. Lee Sung-woo was sent off, and then I said Lama scored twice in 84 and 98 minutes. But they thoroughly deserved to win the game. They had 61% of possession, and they had about 18 shots a goal or something to the 9 of Suwon. Suwon scored against the run of play, which sounds like something you might say often when you watch them play. But they almost held on. But for sure, the better team won that game. And I'm going to say it right now. I think you guys are going to agree with me too. But I hope Busan throws it out on Saturday and goes through Daily Quarter.
Oof. I don't know. I
Yes,
don't know how I
moving
feel
on.
about that. Actually, no, I do know how I feel. I quite want Suwon and I want I want Suwon to go down, and
Suwon can go.
I'd quite like.
The Derby Kelly too.
I want Gimpo to go up because they've been such a great team. But there is that thought that if Gimpo stay down, that you could have nearly all the teams connected on one subway network, which I just think that's the real dream. K League 2. Well, I mean, poor John Nam really in all of this. I mean, but who wants to go to Gwangyang anyway? No, yeah, Busan. They've obviously a bit very unfortunate not to have been promoted directly. Kind of their own undoing, really, with the bottle job, and they've obviously got a bit of a track record in the playoffs over the years of not getting the results they needed as well. But you'd like to think that they should probably see off Suwon FC because Suwon FC they've had a bit of a weird season, really. Ridiculous goal difference, just a non-existent defense. But they're playing all-out attacking football, and they've got no attackers, and they definitely haven't now. Lee Sung-woo's gone. We do have a question in regarding Suwon FC that I am going to jump into, which is from Bora, a Suwon FC fan, Spain, on Twitter, saying he's really nervous about the playoffs and can't think. But besides the small detail that they're a team that receives the most goals in the history of the K League, what do you think has been their biggest problem compared to previous years? For Bora, he's saying the biggest problem was everything broke when Lars had problems, and since then they never attack nor defend. Yeah, Luke.
I mean, they were scoring a lot of goals as well as conceding a lot of goals, and they were always entertaining to watch. But when you lose someone of the caliber of Lars, and the punishment he got was for 15 games, I think it was specifically to make sure that he was out for the rest of the season, even if like they were in the playoffs. It was like this will have been, I think this weekend would be the 15th game that he misses. So I think it was a deliberate consideration that he would miss the rest of the season. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that they've not had anybody else step up. It's disappointing when you see that they can go forward, they can score goals, but I mean the defense is the problem. They conceded 7 at Seoul. They've been shipping goals. I think it was like 5-0 and 3-0 against Suwon. Against Jeju we talked about. They can't defend, and if you keep conceding goals, you're not going to win games. And I think they've been lucky that there have been other teams worse than them. And I mean, I would rather watch a Suwon FC game because you're going to see goals than perhaps watch a Gangwon game or a Bluewings game because they tend to be boring. At least Suwon FC are entertaining. But yeah, I mean, you look at the 3 teams at the bottom of the league, they, over the course of the season, are the 3 worst teams in the league. It's
yeah.
Yeah,
Andrew, anything to add to Luke's comments?
Well, I won't miss the stadium. I think that's probably the fairest statement. I just won't miss the stadium. But I agree with you. They are excited to watch. Actually, the last time I saw them live, they lost 4-3 at home to FC Seoul, and it was around about that time. I don't know if you guys. I mean, of course, you guys remember, but there was there was genuine fear from Jeju that they were going to get sucked back into this relegation battle, and Suwon FC looked like the only team out of the three at the bottom who could potentially overtake them. And then it all fell apart. It all fell apart. They lost to the Bluewings at home, and then I think it was the week before that they lost to Suwon. Oh, sorry, the FC Seoul at home, and it just fell apart so quickly for them. And when I was watching the game today, like the first 25 minutes or so before they went in front, they just seemed to concede loads of territory, loads of corners. It was all Busan, and I don't know if they were. There's no way you're going to take a 0-0 draw back to Suwon, especially the way that they defend. But it just looked very open. It's hard to know what they're trying to do, and it's been like that for most of the season. So they are a small club, and when I was at that game against Seoul, there was one of the local journalists was really emphasizing that point that actually look, they're doing really well. You know, like they're doing their best. They're able to offer this, and this, but actually they're really, really small. And he was saying it in almost an apologetic way. And like if that's true, and you kind of okay, they've done a good job. Like they've gotten the better of Suwon Bluewings for the last couple of seasons. But if they are as small as this guy's letting them on to be, then perhaps the K League 2 is the best league for them anyway. Then that's where I think that's where they're going to end up now.
Yeah, I think we'll get on to predictions in a minute, but I think I'd concur with that. And I think I've always liked Suwon FC because A, they're not the Bluewings, but B, they're like a really. I've always felt like they've always had a nice family ethos at the club. I always felt like they've always put on good things on the racetrack, the running track around, and they've always kind of created a good atmosphere. I think in terms of playing style, I think Kim Do-kyun has just ran out of ideas. I think he obviously was hired with not much experience. It was some experience in the university leagues and assistant coaching, but it's his first managerial gig in professional football, and he just went out and attacked, and I think that's a very good way of playing K League 2. You go and just attack teams. You're gonna get the goals and things. But I think Suwon had the element of surprise when they came up with him at the helm, but I think that element of surprise is slowly being found out, and you think somebody would have taken him to one side saying you need to work on your defense, because the tactics for Suwon have been the same for so long. How many seasons have we been saying, oh, they're really good at attacking but not good at defending? Oh, they're really good, it's the Kevin Keegan of K-League, but 1-1-8 formations and all sorts. But it's just
the goalkeeping errors, though.
Yeah,
the goalkeeping errors, and there's nothing. I wonder how much you can put that on the man as well, but like there seems to be so many fluky goals, or the craziest goals that seem to be scored against Suwon FC.
Well, this is another thing as well. When you, as a goalkeeper, like when you have a defense in front of you who's not actually doing their job, and you're getting hit with shots that you perhaps wouldn't expect because they're coming from angles or distances where it shouldn't be possible to get a shot away. Like for whatever reason, you're probably looking as a goalkeeper, keeping your eye on where the ball might go. Like out wide, is a cross going to come in? Is this going to happen? You're probably not expecting the shots that you're facing, especially like if you've got holes in your defense. So I know like across K-League, I think there are quite a few goalkeeping errors every season where we look at it and we think like, what's caused that? But oftentimes it's that there have been shots that have been conceded. People should be getting shots in and they're not being blocked the way that they should be being blocked. And I don't know. I think that's a result of not having a proper defense in front of you. I mean, if you're running and you're 3-on-3 with a defense, like you have so many options. And as a keeper, you're keeping your eye on where's the ball going to go. Are you going to have to run out and block this because there's a man over here or there's a man over here? You're probably not expecting the shots that you're facing because you're trying to like preempt everything else that's happening. In defense of goalkeepers.
Good to get the goalkeepers union on the podcast, actually. But no, that is a very fair point. Obviously putting goalkeepers under pressures with a bit of lack of structure. I just think like Kim Do-kyun, surely he could get the coaches instead of trying to bring new players in. Surely work on the backroom staff, find the staff that can help improve these areas of the pitch. It's okay if you don't know how to set up a team defensively.
Ask for help.
Yeah. Don't just keep going, well, I'll just keep outscoring them and we'll be fine, because you're not fine.
Like when you're playing against a K1 defense, especially someone who's like defenders who've had a lot of experience. When you're playing against sort of someone like Osmar or Ki Sung-young who can break up play just in front of the defense, you're going to be left horribly exposed.
Yeah.
And you find that, and if there's one thing like upper K1 teams are good at, it's breaking and breaking quickly. And if you've got an opportunity to run forward and everybody else is out of position, you're gonna score. And like sometimes I think Suwon FC have overcommitted men going forward because they have that kind of like the emphasis on attack, and it kind of just leaves massive holes at the back. I mean, the 7-2 game against Seoul, it was like they had 8 men rather than having 11 men on the pitch. There was just empty space everywhere, but they still managed to score 2 goals. Remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. Seem to know a lot about goalkeepers. Burger's coming in saying here on YouTube. I heard you're offered a trial once, Luke.
If I lost weight, unfortunately, I've not.
No. Well, there's always hope. Incheon are going to be
always
a bit
next year.
Yeah, there's always next year. We'll quickly get to the point on this one then. So we've got 2 games this weekend. Suwon FC at home to Busan iPark with a 2-1 deficit to try and claw back. How do we see this game going? Andrew, thoughts, prediction?
The Suwon game, goals again, but with Bruno Lamas in the lineup, I think Busan have a striker who can. We keep talking about that Suwon defense who can cause them a lot of trouble. I'm going to go for Busan to win this game 2-1, possibly 3-2.
I think as well, if Busan don't go up this time, then there's going to be a lot of people in K1 looking at him and looking to try and take him, because he's proven himself to be a capable goal scorer. I think I'd like to say I think it'll be a tight game, but I'm not quite sure. I think we might see like a capitulation on the Suwon side. They're missing a lot of players. They've got Isanu suspended. I think it could be like a 3-1.
Yeah,
maybe a 4-1. They've got a point to Busan.
Yeah, I think as well. We haven't really got time to get into it, but Park Jin-sop has done really good job at Busan since coming in, and obviously had that terrible season when he was moved to Seoul from Gwangju, and he's really. It'd be good to see him back in the K-League 1, having another crack at what he had done so well with Gwangju. But yeah, just for this game, I think it's all set up for Busan to win. On to the other one. Gangwon are at home to Gimpo. Forgot again for a second. It's 0-0 going into that one. We've got the other way around this time. Luke, how are you seeing this one playing out?
I think it's going to be another disappointing game. I think Gimpo might try to come out and attack a bit more, but I think Gwangju will have too much. Gangwon will have too much. They don't concede many goals. I think if they get 1 goal, if Gangwon score, then it's game over.
Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, I was thinking 1-0. Just Gangwon have got one of the better defensive records in the entire league, which is surprising given where they finished. Gimpo do have some quality up front, though. We didn't see much of it today by the sounds of it, but I have a feeling it's going to be low scoring. It's going to be tight. I'm going to go for Gangwon to win 1-0.
Indeed. Well, I also think Gangwon are going to do it. And Paul, he sent some stats. He says Gangwon have been here before, of course. Oh, well, I wonder why Paul remembers that. He says the K-League promotion relegation playoffs are in their 11th year in 2023, and he says in the 9 ties between a K-League 2 and a K-League 1 team in that time, the side which has won the first leg has gone on to win the tie overall on 6 occasions, and on 4 occasions this was the K-League 2 team. Sangju, Gwangju, Suwon, and Daejeon 2022. Big letters, hearts, everything.
Hang on, Daejeon won a playoff? I'm sure he's never mentioned that before.
No, I think we should start we should put it in the intro or something. We should put it in the intro or something just so we're aware. But yeah, only on 1 occasion has the K-League 2 team won the first leg and gone on to lose the tie, that being Daejeon in 2021. With Gangwon roaring back to overturn a 1-goal deficit to win the second leg 4-1, and then lots of expletives about ball boys that I cannot read out on
I
air.
remember that one. I remember
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. But yeah, the first 3 years of the playoffs, they saw K-League 2 team win the first leg and go on to win promotion. For the first 4 years, the K-League 2 team went to win the tie overall, but in 2017 and 18, the K-League 1 teams were able to avoid relegation. Gwangju and, well, unfortunately, FC Seoul. But yeah, so there's some stats here at the end of that. We're going to have a quick break, and then we're going to do Footballogy match of the round. So, don't worry.
Footballogy is a football app like no other. With the handiest tool for football fans on your phone, you can locate any match nearby no matter where on the planet you are or plan to be. Keep track of all your visited games, collect all kinds of stats, and get badges for achievements like special games and milestone events. The Footballogy app covers more than 80,000 grounds and 1,200 leagues worldwide, including K-League 1 and 2, as well as K3 and K4 and the WK League. Download Footballogy for free today on iPhone or Android. Connect with your friends, and your football life will never be the same again.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast for the final part of what has been a lengthy live episode. Matthew Binns here. I'm with Andrew Farrell, Luke Evans, and Paul Needs Notes. A quick comment in here from Azri as well, saying, Paul, at least they're generating K-League 1 now. Better late than never. Well, better late than never. That's also what Luke is thinking later when he finally gets to have his dinner, which he'd prolonged for a short pod. What you got on the cards? Forget the Footballogy for a minute.
Well, it's supposed to be cheese Doncaster, but I don't know if my missus will have eaten it by now. It's been sitting out for a while. I'll be surprised if I've got any left.
Well, we won't hold you in suspense for too long because Andrew is going to just quickly go through this weekend's Footballogy match of the round. Andrew, there's two I can see to choose from. Which one are you picking?
This is the last one we're going to do of the season as well, of course. There's no more games after.
Yeah, I guess it is, yeah.
Our final Footballogy match weekend. The choice is basically beers on the beach before Gangwon FC versus Gimpo, or beers at the Hwasong Fortress before Suwon FC versus Busan. Both stadiums are not great from a ground hobby point of view, but as we saw today, and I think we're going to see something similar to this on Saturday, the better game is going to be in Suwon on Saturday. So if you have a choice between Gangwon FC versus Gimpo and Suwon FC versus Busan Park, go to Suwon Stadium. There are thousands of tickets left. I checked this earlier on today, which is not a great sign. There are thousands of seats available for a 2 o'clock start. It's supposed to be 13 to 14 degrees on Saturday. The weather looks pretty good. The Suwon Stadium is one of the oldest and unfortunately probably one of the most despised stadiums of Korean football, but it has a lot of history. Of course, the Suwon Bluewings used to play there, and they have an awful record since they left that stadium to move back to since they moved to Big Bird. So it has a capacity of about 12,000. Actually, all of the only seats that are not in the original structure, so those seats behind the goal, which I think is on the south side where the kind of the home ultras go, that section is sold out, but there are loads of other tickets available if you want to go along to that game. The closest station is Hwasa Station in line number 1. It's about a 40-minute walk. I like Suwon as a town. I think Suwon's a pretty cool city. So if you are going to go to that game, check out the Hwasong Fortress, have a couple of beers, and enjoy what seems to be Busan's promotion party.
I think it's telling as well. You say there's a lot of tickets left for the game. They had a very disappointing crowd on Saturday as well. Like they're in a game that could either see them relegated and finish bottom, or where they can win and like stay up and finish 10th, and nobody came. The stadium was empty. It was very disappointing. But hopefully there's a few more enjoying this weekend's game, eh?
Yeah, let's at least sell it, lads. Come on.
I'll be at that one. I'm going to go to that game. Are you guys going to hit up a game, or are you done, cashed out?
I'm tempted to head to Suwon. I'm also tempted to have both games on at home and just I'm
going to see how I feel when I wake up.
Well, I mean, there's no rush to reserve. So
what do you think about the two games starting at the same time?
I don't. Yeah, what's the point?
They can't affect each other. They're not. They're. You may as well have one at 2 and one at 4 and let people watch both. Like, it's not like they can affect each other's outcome. It's not like they're even connected in any way. Like,
we've got to wrap it up, lads. K-League. They're just like, we've got to get on holiday. Like, the plane's leaving Saturday night. Just get it all wrapped up, all the paperwork done, get the tweets out, done. So but no, no reason why it couldn't be two different times.
The games tonight could have been like sort of Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and then Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. If it's a time thing where they're worried that it's going to be cold at 4:30, they could have done a Saturday and Sunday game. Like, again, it's just.
It also depends what might be going on at the stadiums, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Might be some kind of Christmas
under
festival
14 tournament.
Yeah, no. Obviously, for those unaware, K-League stadiums are all owned by the government, so it all depends on what other competitions and events are being hosted when these fixture lists are made. But we're not going to go into that. We're going to end the podcast here because it has reached an hour 15 mark, and Luke is getting a bit worried about his food. Andrew's looking a bit tired, and I've got to put this together. So that's the end of it. Thank you for joining me, lads, and hopefully everybody enjoys a cracking weekend of playoffs. Thanks so much for listening. Goodbye.
Thank you.
전주성 공공 폭격기